Rare genetic disorders such as cerebral adrenoleukodystrophy and metachromatic leukodystrophy influence how the central nervous system works. Both diseases are caused by a separate defective gene that causes a damaged or misshapen myelin sheath. There are 40 known leukodystrophies. ALD is caused by a mutation in the ABCD1 gene, which produces the ALDP protein, which aids in the breaking down of fatty acids. These fatty acids build up when ALDP isn't working, causing damage to the myelin sheath. Approximately 40% of the boys with ALD can progress to the most serious form of the disease, CALD. MLD is divided into three categories based on the age at which symptoms appear: late infantile, adolescent, and adult. A defective gene called aryl sulfatase, ARSA, which produces a protein that cleans up cells, is often the cause of MLD. Gene therapy involves inserting a functional version of the defective therapeutic gene into the cells that make key proteins by using a vector, which is mostly derived from a virus but lacks viral genes. Stem cells are unidentified cells that differentiate into specific cell types as required by the body. A blood draw is used to extract hematopoietic blood stem cells, which are then altered with a vector to produce a functional copy of the defective gene. The patient's own cells are used in the gene therapy approach, which reduces the chance of immune system problems that can arise with donor transplants. Companies such as Bluebird Bio, Orchard Therapeutics, and Homology Medicines are conducting preclinical studies and clinical trial research and production of gene therapies. There are three main phases of the preclinical trials. The first phase is testing the treatment safety on a small number of patients. Second stage is increasing number of patients if the response is favorable. And the last stage is typically the longest one, in which the effectiveness of treatment is tested in large groups.
As leukodystrophy symptoms typically show up within early childhood, getting a diagnosis as early as possible is really crucial, as a damaged myelin sheath can result in neurodegeneration. Another important thing is to check family history for the disease. As it is a genetic disease, checking family history is very important for the diagnosis. For this reason, genetic testing should be done before or during pregnancy to check if the child is at risk. This early testing can be done in a number of ways. The most effective one as of now is medical screening of newborns for the disease. And for this reason, many organizations, which will be talked about later, are advocating for ALD and MLD screening to be made mandatory in hospitals all across the US. As leukodystrophy is still a rare disease, treatment and medication for it is still on a clinical trial basis. And eligibility for such clinical trials varies from person to person, as it is advised that every patient talk to their physician to determine the eligibility for a clinical trial, as there are different constraints for different trials. For example, for CALD gene therapy treatment, male patients 17 years or younger are eligible with consent from the guardian, and patients with a history of pulmonary or cardiovascular disease are excluded. Now, talking more about clinical trials, there are certain things that a person needs to consider before a clinical trial. The first thing is informed consent. As clinical trials are still an experimental procedure, the person should be aware of this and should be aware of the risks and benefits associated with it. Along with that, physical preparation and lifestyle preparation is also necessary, and there is also a long-term follow-up due to the FDA guidelines in the United States and due to the phase structure of clinical trials. And along with that, one more crucial thing to consider is the disapproval or approval of the medication by the FDA, as the furthest gene therapy candidate is at phase 3 of clinical investigation. Well, now you may ask what those phases are. Well, there are 5 phases of clinical trials, and it starts with phase 0, where the medication is tested on a very small number of people, less than 15. Moving on to phase 1, where it is tested on 20 to 80 people with no underlying medical conditions. If it passes that, it moves on to phase 2, which involves several hundred participants living with the condition the medication is meant to treat. After clearing phase 2, the medication moves on to the longest phase, phase 3, where the medication is tested on up to 3,000 people with the medical condition. This phase can last up to several years. due to observation of shortcomings or side effects of the medication, if any. After phase 3, there is phase 4 where the FDA approves the medication for commercial. And finally, the best way to help combat such diseases is to stay informed. In the case of MLD, the organization MLD Foundation has made headways in combating the disease. As their website provides information on MLD, its causes and treatments, provides up-to-date news on policies and clinical trials, strive to raise awareness and educate the people on MLD, and most importantly, host fundraisers which directly fund research. In the case of ALD, the foundation ALD Connect strives to do the same, and in addition, it advocates for newborn screening for ALD in the US and has so far been successful in 18 states, and also provides a community for ALD patients, in addition to also hosting fundraisers.